All right. Very good evening to you all. Hello. You're very welcome. We are delighted to have you here with our latest webinar. This one is particularly exciting for myself and Jess because we haven't done a webinar in over a year, I think. We've been too busy building films. When I say building, I haven't. Jess has been too busy, not building, but filming, and has been doing an amazing job. And so thank you always to her. But that has brought us back from doing any of these webinars, but now we decided to bring them back because a lot of people have been asking for them, and we want to help as much as we can. For those of you who maybe don't know who I am, I think most of you do, but just in case, my name is Ray Lavery, and I, with Jess Crooks, who you can see busy looking at something else there, together we run Trans Matters Worldwide and also the London Transgender Meetup Group. Now, most of you, I see some of the names in here, you know us anyway because you come to our meetups. But for those of you who maybe are a little new in there, that's what it is that we do. And we have a bunch of events that we run every month. It changes every month depending on what we feel like, to be honest with you. So, a large part of what myself and Jess does is not just to provide these social outlets for people, which for us is a very important thing. It's very important that you develop your trans family. It's very important that you feel that you are part of a community, that you are heard, and that you realize how beautiful and wonderful that you are. And that is what a lot of people get from that, and we love that. But we also want to throw our net a little bit wider. And what we mean by that is to provide education, to give people tools, to give people the ability to help themselves and to bring themselves forward on their own journey. The entire purpose being to be happy. That is what it is all about, is to be happy. So I don't want to talk anymore because I'm always do this and then I end up monologuing and it's just ridiculous. But anyway, so what I wanted to do was I also wanted to introduce to you our wonderful speaker today. This is Anneleen De Clercq. Do you want to give away? I mean, it's obvious who you are because you're the only one who hasn't spoken yet. So welcome, Anneleen, and thank you so much for being here. It's good to have you. It's good to have you. Now, Anneleen and I have worked together on different projects on my day job outside as a management consultant. That is how we actually met. And frankly, we've become friends ever since then. And she's a fantastic lady. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what she's going to share with us this evening. So, Anneleen, maybe let's start at the beginning, perhaps. How about you just tell everybody a little bit about you, where you come from, how you ended up here. Very open question. So off you go yourself.
Great. Remind me, how long do we have?
Well, we typically have an hour, but off you go. Off you go.
It's okay. Yes, hello everybody, and yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. I am a therapist and a breath coach and a hypnotherapist, but I think I'd like to describe myself most as a mental fitness coach. Because people find fitness really important. Everybody knows we should do it, but we're always talking about physical fitness. And I think it's massively overlooked that mental fitness and mental flexibility is incredibly important. I have been using that a lot with my people, with my clients in my therapy practice, but I thought if we could preventatively share that as well, and I'm talking, for example, simple tools to calm you down when you're kind of overwhelmed or when you just kind of like that little voice or sometimes a very big voice in your mind doesn't stop kind of like yapping at you or I don't know, when you have these kind of like sticky, what I call sticky thoughts kind of going on a loop, if you just kind of like knew how to deal with it, I mean, life can become so much easier as well. And yeah, for me, it's all about life is always going to throw us curveballs. Life is always going to challenge us because that's life. But it's about how do we respond? It's not about what happens to you, but how do you respond to what happens to you that ultimately defines the quality of your life. And I think a lot of that can be in your control. So that's, you may have already noticed, that's my passion. It's kind of
I
like
do. I am aware. Yes. So
yes.
I already love what I'm hearing here, I'm a big fan of empowering oneself and giving oneself their own tools. And look, that, as I said already, that path towards happiness, that's absolutely the way to go. Of course, in our world, in the transgender world, we go a little bit further than most people, right? The adversity that we face, the criticism that we face, the hurdles that we face, it's larger than most other groups,
Oh,
right? And
I absolutely, I can imagine a little bit, because I'm the mother of a trans man as well. So I have a bit of insight in the stresses and the stressors that are being put on the transgender community, or that are being perceived as well. It's massive. And of course, it's always what can we do about it? And I think empowering yourself by just kind of learning very simple skills often, can, yeah, it can make a massive difference.
absolutely, I mean, the more simple these tools are, I think, the better. Sometimes people are, they give you these mad complicated things, and it's just not. How are you going to fit that into your day? Like, it's ridiculous. If, I mean, for instance, nothing to do with mental health, but if I did everything my physiotherapist told me to do over the years, that's all I do. I wouldn't get on with life because the
Yeah.
list is so long. And it's kind of like that a little bit with the mental fitness side of things, and sort of the mental health. People say, well, it'll only take you 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And yeah, but these 10 minutes add up. They really add up, and we don't
Yeah.
need that to be an additional stress on top of life. So,
No, no, and
you know,
also you shouldn't get stressed about being stressed either, right? So
right.
I am very much a proponent of kind of like how simple can it be? But of course, if you do things once, it may not have a big impact, right? That's
Absolutely, absolutely. And I guess it's getting those bits right. So let's kick off. Let's kick off. So of course I have a number of questions, and it's based around, I suppose, the bits that I feel are some of the biggest challenges that we actually face, and that is where I'd like to do it. So at the moment, there's a lot of additional adversity that is being thrown at us, an awful lot. This is on the social side. This is on the I don't know. There's a lot of hate groups out there. There's a lot of turfs out there. There's a lot of people at us. There's a lot of people who are just using, let's just say, hate, to try and disrupt who we are, and all of it, as far as I can tell, comes from a complete lack of understanding as to what this is all about. But if you could just put yourself, I don't know, what can you, is there a tool that you can give, or is there a way of looking at this that will really help people to minimize the disruption of these, frankly, attacks? What would you do? What would you suggest? What can we implement?
right. I think you've packed in about 11 questions in this one question, right?
I tend to do
That's
that.
his
You take
style.
it at your leisure, yes.
Yes. I think if I would take a few steps back, I think the first and foremost important thing is to become aware. And you might think like, what, become aware of what? And that can be to become aware of um, what's going on in your surroundings, what's going on in your relationship, what's going on inside of you. Because once you are aware, you then get a choice point. I always say, kind of, once you're aware, you're halfway there, right? Because now you can decide to do something about it. If you're not aware what's going on, you react. And reaction is very reflexive, and basically it's automatic. It comes from habit, etc. But also reactions, you can't really control that.
Yeah,
And to me, it's all about what are ways that I can get control basically in my remit so I can do things about that. But you first have to notice, for example, that you're not feeling well in yourself, or you're feeling nervous, for example, and the situation doesn't call for it. So then is the question, okay, what can I do about it? So I say the awareness is the most important, and that can be something as simple as, um, right, a quick pause every day at 12 o'clock or every 2 hours, whatever, and go like, what are the five things around me that I can see? And name them. Okay, trees, park, bench, whatever. What are the four things that you can hear? What are the three things that you can touch, for example? And so what that does, and that can be five, that can be three, it doesn't really matter. But what that does, that it immediately brings you into the now and basically gets you out of your head and into the present moment. And into the present moment is basically where your power lies. So I
Right.
would say awareness is for me the first to start with. Um,
So,
and
but what you're saying here is ground yourself first, more or less. It's like going, okay,
it's
so rather than your
grounding
mind going all over the place, it's like, right,
also.
where am I
Well,
right now? What's going on?
yeah, yes. And the grounding, I would almost kind of like say that's kind of like a separate thing because it's first kind of like noticing what goes on. And then as a second step, I think you have to be able to create kind of like mental bandwidth. Because if you're completely maxed out, you have no time to sit briefly, and you don't have to sit, of course, but to go, oh, let me feel how is my breath or whatever. It's basically if you are completely maxed out, you generally it tends to be because of stress. And if
Yeah.
you are very stressed, you see nothing but negative things, you see nothing but risks because that's the way we are biologically wired. And so the that would be the third step then, or it's not a step, but the most important is do something about your stress. And it's very hard to say, oh, I'll calm my mind by using my mind. I don't know. Have you tried to say like, oh, Ray, calm
I
down?
mean, I try meditation all the time, and I think I get about three breaths in before I lose concentration when I'm thinking about something else. So
Yeah.
apparently, I've been told that it's because my mental muscles are not strong. Well, they're
Ah,
bloody weak.
I know
They're
somebody
weak.
who can help you.
So, but I tell you what, I think meditation is a great tool, but it's one tool, and
It's
it doesn't work for everyone.
no, it's but also if we're talking basics fitness skills, meditation is fantastic, but there are a lot more basic and easy skills than doing that. But what I'm just trying to say is kind of like trying to influence your mind by using your mind is hard. But what we can do is use our body to influence our mind, or vice versa. You can do it both. But basically, there's a number of things in our body that biologically, physiologically are bound to happen. Basically, it's kind of like 100% law. Once you know these, then you know that if they calm your mind, it's kind of like a guaranteed button. It's almost like a remote control.
Right. So, okay, so use them. I get that, but I think what you're saying as well is that when you're taking stock of where things are at 12 o'clock and the five things you touch and the four things you see and all this kind of stuff, it enables you to bring yourself back into now. And so then you can see what am I stressed, like,
Yeah.
if I'm getting 50 things out at the same time and I'm typing away furiously, like, I'll know that my entire body is tense. For me, that's how it goes. I'll have pains in my shoulders, pains in my lower back, my heart to a degree will be racing, or I often find that I do things like hold my breath. Now these are specific to me. Who
Yes.
knows what anybody else is doing?
Oh,
The point
that's
being is
everybody
that
has the same problems.
I bet they do. But the point being is that when I'm going 100 miles an hour, I don't notice these things. I
No.
don't notice that I'm doing them. But this idea of slowing down, and then I realize, oh, hang on, I need to breathe or I'll fall over, or I need to relax my back, or I need to stand up and walk around. You know what I mean? And if I'm focused out, then I kind of ignore how my body is feeling. I think that's kind of what you're talking about. Am I right in that?
Yes, yes. And of course, guess what? Your mind and your body are kind of completely interconnected, right? I mean, it's only in the medical world that they just kind of like treat them as separate. It's basically because you're stressed, your muscles will be tense.
Yeah.
And your muscles are tense. Guess what? You have like a nerve, the longest nerve in your body is called the vagus nerve, and that feeds constantly information from your body to your brain. And I don't want to go too much into depth here, but basically, there's like here a little nerve center that says, okay, what signals are coming up? Ooh, Ray's really tense. That might mean that he is in danger. We better issue some more cortisol and adrenaline and noradrenaline. And guess what? You're gonna get even more tense. And it's basically kind of finding this kind of like kind of a breaker through that loop.
Okay.
And if I can I introduce one now?
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
Please do.
Um, if we say, and it is guaranteed to work because you use your body.
Right.
To re- to is I'm going to ask you first, Ray, and both Jess as well. How are you feeling?
I mean,
A
I
quick
feel,
mind body scan,
all right.
because that's the first thing we have to learn to read what's going on, right?
Yes. So
And
do you want an
let's
actual answer, or is it just because I presume everybody at home is going to be doing the same thing,
exactly.
right? So, okay.
I invite everybody else to do that again as well. Basically, do just and for me, it's kind of like I see kind of like an old-fashioned scan, like going down. What's going on in my head? Is it full? Is it buzzing? Oh, my shoulders are tense, whatever. And there is no right or wrong answer, but it's about learning to check what's going on. And once you do that, and it does not serve your purpose, then you can do something about it. It's again
Okay.
creating that awareness, right?
Okay, so give yourself a bit of time, ground yourself in the now, do a body scan, more or
Yes.
less,
Yeah.
see where things are not relaxed, where you're tense or whatever, your jaw is going mad, you're grinding your teeth or whatever it might be for people. And then realize that the reason you're doing that is because something has triggered that stress response inside of you.
That can be, but it's also our unfortunately our biology has not adapted current societal changes, and we get triggered so often. And of course, that you start to carry this chronic stress. But it doesn't have to be one trigger. If it's one thing, you know what? That's very our bodies are very robust. They will very quickly adjust and calm down again. Um, but it's kind of like that residual stress that you're carrying as well. What I'm not going to ask you to tell us how you feel, but
I'll tell you.
Yeah, me too. Let's do it.
okay, go
Yeah,
for
I'll
it.
tell you. I don't care.
No, no, but so, and I don't need to know, but it's more for yourself to, if we now do, for example, a quick exercise,
Yeah.
that you afterwards do that mind body scan again and to notice, do I notice a difference? Right?
Okay. All right.
Um,
I'll
all
play.
right, okay, good.
Yes, yeah.
So what I would suggest is, and some of you may know this, is called box breathing or square breathing. And it
Okay.
is used by Navy SEALs, by firefighters, by police, etc., because it is very good at resetting your nervous system while keeping you focused. And
Okay.
he goes, it's very simple. You breathe in through your nose for four counts, or three, or five, or seven, depends on yourself, of course. Let's see if we do that now. We breathe in for four, one, two, three, four, and then we hold our breath. Three, four, and breathe out. Two, three, four, and we hold our breath. Two, three, four, and in through the nose. Three, four, and hold. Two, three, four, breathe out. Two, three, four, and hold. Two, three, four. I say we do one more time in. Three, four, hold. Two, three, four, we breathe out. Two, three, four, hold. Two, three, four. And now you can take a catch up breath if you need to.
Right. So it kind of resets your breathing. And I do
Well, now
feel myself relaxing
my,
a little bit more. Yeah.
my question is to you. Do you mind
Yeah.
body scan? Do you notice something different? Maybe, maybe not, right?
I
Maybe
feel
my
better.
yes, feeling better. Do you know, I love this particular exercise and I have come across it before. And I can see, first of all, when you focus on something that's quite simple like that, there's only four counts. Like you don't, your mind doesn't wander. That's the first thing. But also, secondly, I've seen this one used for people who are training to be deep sea divers, who are trying to hold their breath for maybe 7 minutes and go down like 100 feet or whatever. And it is this that they're doing. And so when you do this training, they start at something like 5 or 10 seconds, but then it goes to 30 seconds, 30 seconds holds, 1 minute hold, and stuff like that. And that's how, and what it does is by doing this, it oxygenates your brain and it
Yeah.
sort of resets what it is that you've got. So you don't have a deficit of oxygen, and it that's
The
the
oxygen
reset.
is one thing, but
Yeah,
also what happens is if you are in a permanent state of stress, and what I said earlier is like if your body is tense, basically your brain is going to think that you're in danger and is going to make you even more tense and breathe up high and shallow. Um, but it's also about being able to break that loop and in the case of the box breathing, the fact that you're counting means also that your working memory gets crowded out. So if you're sitting with kind of like a thought that just keeps coming back, and why did I say that? Why did they do this or whatever? That's kind of like your 2, 3 minute memory that
yeah.
basically keeps going. But if you count, that needs to go, right?
Okay.
So it's very simple. You can look on your phone for a GIF. You're gonna find a GIF that you send to yourself, for example. And even in moments of stress, if you just kind of like can't quite remember anymore, like, oh, what was it? You just kind of see what did I send myself, and you can look your GIF and you follow it. Because what happens is if you're really stressed, you have to be quick and everything in your body mobilizes to be quick. And that's, of course, still from that moment when you had to run for the proverbial kind of like tiger or whatever. And what it does, it switches off your prefrontal cortex. And that's basically where you normally take rational decisions with.
Mm,
But in a moment where you supposedly have to be quick, you can't think like, all right, let's do a pro or con analysis, for example. No, basically it has to go fast, so that gets switches off. And
mm.
and it's kind of like anything that can get you back basically into your body and where you're it switches back on again, right?
Right. Yeah, I like that, and I like that the idea of it because something you had said there earlier about sort of like breathing deeper because we're shallow breathers. Like most of us only use like 10 or 15% of our lungs, and because we're shallow breathing, because like that is in itself a stress response, and this type of
Yeah.
breathing brings you back in. So it also when people are very stressed, and I think the thing is that most of us spend most of our life in a heightened sense of stress. It's like there's a tiger running after us 24 hours a day, and that's how it feels. And that really impedes our ability to think and to think clearly, which is what you were just saying, because I know that there was a study done or a report that I read somewhere, but when people are like, let's say they come across an accident and they then somebody needs help immediately, but they're so stressed and they're so heightened that they're not able to make a decision, which is why the emergency number is 999 or 111, because people's ability to even hit the digits on the phone, when it was a different number was so bad. So all they could do was just hit the same number 3 times. And that's where that's what they discovered to use so that people could call emergencies because our ability, our motor function literally shuts down at the same time. Which one is that fight or flight? Not full, but it's one of them or probably both of them at the same time. So
You know, I
I
don't
like,
like to use that anyway because
yeah,
I mean it's but it's easy to say, right?
yeah, yeah,
It's
exactly.
just stress response, but it's finding that tool. And for example, box breathing does that. I've got even another one that acts even quicker. But of course,
Okay.
what's important is that you do this, for example, every time when you're sitting, I don't know, in a bus or in your car, or every time when you make a cup of coffee or whatever, because that means then you make it a habit. And if you don't make it a habit, the moment that you need it, you're gonna think, "Oh, what was this again? We talked about it, but I can't remember,"
Mm,
because you can't think in that moment.
right.
It sounds a lot like it sounds very much like the conversations I've been having with my therapist recently, just based on everything that's been happening with the campaign. And before I say this, I will say it's been a wonderful, wonderful amount of support. But we have been hate mobbed a few times, and I'd sort of emailed him and said, what sort of protections can I do to sort of help myself with this? I feel like with the breathing and stuff, we've covered some of the more physical stuff. Are there elements of the mental side that are maybe more helpful?
Um, yes, there are, but what I just mentioned earlier as well is because it's not only physical, because if your body calms down, your mind count calms down.
Hmm.
Your muscles get de-stressed. So it works on both. So it's not only this that you feel calmer, because if you feel calmer, your mind calms down.
Hmm.
And that's why it's you always carry it with you. It's free of charge. They should charge it, and that's probably why people and then people might start to appreciate it more. Um, but if I hear your question right, of course, our mind is just very often kind of like giving us grief in moments of being hate mob. I can imagine it's all about you. You just don't feel safe, and you must get very angry as well. Um, calming down is again is always going to help. Um, in a way, because let's say it's a very strong emotion, and emotion is almost kind of is energy in motion in a
Hmm.
way, and it's kind of like, can we process that emotional energy through our body? Yes. Then our breath helps us a lot. What for me helps a lot as well is I have given my mind a name. That means I can enter in conversations with my mind. But once I am in a conversation, that means that I can also distance myself in a way from the story, and I start to look at it. It's basically in moments when that happens, it's kind of the story that has, and of course that's not disrespectful that I call it the story, but the situation, whatever, has power over you. And it's kind of like, okay, how can I get my power back? Is quite important. And if I start to argue with my mind, and of course I'll just kind of just tell how I do it, is I can start saying like, that's all good and well, but it's not helpful, so I'm not going to listen, right? Or yeah, do you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about here is you're giving yourself an outside perspective. You're removing yourself from everything that's happening to me, and you're putting another literal entity into it here, where their perspective is different, and they weren't stressed out. They're just coming across the situation, and they're like, "Well, what are you doing?" You know what I mean? It's like ringing up your best friend, going, "Well, you won't believe what she said to me on the phone." And they're like, going, "Yeah, well, of course she did, because this happened and that happened." And it kind of brings that perspective back in.
it does, because in a way it's our brain is always trying to keep us safe.
Right.
And it's doing anything to keep us safe, in the sense that it's just constantly problem solving and looking for problems, even if there aren't no problems there. And of course, Jess, in that moment, there were problems there. Um, but it's the thoughts will keep coming at us, and it's up to us to learn to notice which ones are helpful for us, or which ones not. And I think in a moment of stress, you listen to everything, because what I said earlier is you don't have the mental bandwidth to start distinguishing, because it's all um, but the distancing helps enormously.
Right. I've never
Mm.
thought of giving my, I mean, we all have conversations with ourselves, whether we admit it or not, we all do it. But to consciously do it, because sometimes you find
Yeah.
yourself like your left and right shoulder is having this conversation, the other one's having this conversation, and it's like, well, which one will I listen to? Oh, it's like the person in the middle, not sure which road to take. But to consciously do it, rather than it just being there, it's like, hang on a second, I am using this as a tool. And by doing this, I'm giving myself perspective. And by changing that perspective, well, the problem is now completely different. I've
Yeah,
never heard anybody say that before.
Yeah,
yeah,
I've definitely like I mean I know I'm someone with a very strong internal monologue, and there have even been times in my life where that monologue has turned on me every now and again. But being able to like identify that and naming it, I think is really interesting. I think that's I think it's quite powerful.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Because
Right.
also the minute that you can name it, and that's where the mind body scan comes in again, kind of. And I didn't ask earlier, like name it. Well, I did ask a little bit, but because the minute you can name it in kind of like as much detail as possible, it becomes then also easier to do something about it. And that
Yeah.
might be like naming your emotion. So, for example, let's say you were kind of like the hate mails were coming in and you got really, really angry. But then if I ask, okay, is that anger, was that furious or was that frustrated? Or I mean, there's so many little many differences of
Yeah.
anger, let's say, but they
It tends to be,
require a different strategy.
yeah. So a lot of the stuff that comes out tends to be it tends to be feel very personal.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Even if
yeah,
you're reading something in the newspaper or somebody, writes I don't know, some turf is given out about something, you know what I mean? And it feels like a personal slight. It feels like it's been said directly to us. And so it's very hard to step out of that and just see it from where it really is.
yeah,
And because they are going out of their way to cause as much suffering as possible. That is the agenda. And that's and it's funny because our agenda is the complete opposite to that. Our agenda is to find peace, is to find love, it is to find respect, it is to be respectful and educate with an enormous dose of patience, which we don't always have. And so when you are ignored, literally, and then the stuff just keeps coming at you, and mostly it's coming at you. In fact, always it's coming at us from people who are severely uneducated and they think they're right and that in itself is infuriating. But then what they leverage at you is designed to be as hurtful as possible, designed on purpose. So, what is there a way that, like, I like what you're saying, stepping back and taking perspective, but if somebody's in your face, it's very difficult to do that.
yeah.
Jess, she was talking there about, actually, Jess, you tell that story about you had mentioned just very briefly about an ad that we put on. Tell that story. And you'll see. Do you remember it? I can't remember.
Which specific one are we
All
talking
right,
about?
so we put up an ad on TikTok for
Oh, okay, yeah. No,
yeah,
this has happened a few times. Yeah, we've the when the campaign video went out, it went quite well for us, quite viral. As far as anything we'd put out previously, I think just like metric wise, by the power of like 80 or 100 like times more than anything else we'd made before. And on TikTok in particular, I was waking up every day and have been this week as well, actually, as the campaign comes to the close. It's happening again. Waking up to 100 fresh messages of, oh, you're a child groomer or a pedophile, or even more personal stuff like misgendering me, because I'll say, like, my name is Jess Crooks at the beginning of most videos. It'll be trying to, like, find out what my dead name is or something like that. One of the things my therapist helped me with, and I think it's sort of relevant here, was this idea of, because we kind of touched upon it there for a second, taking not pleasure so much, but feeling righteous in that you are right, like they are wrong. The people that are sending these messages are just saying things because they're ignorant or uninformed. We have the science behind us. We know exactly what we're doing. Like, it's you're just looking at something that's wrong. And I think when you're looking at it in that lens, it's a little bit more palatable to like get through. It's like, oh, these people are just like not educated on the subject matter, and that
Yeah,
for me at least.
yeah, yeah. I mean, what for me also immediately springs to mind is having compassion for them
Hmm.
because clearly they know not better. And
mm,
but for compassion, again, you need bandwidth,
Yeah.
right? So, and it's really, really tough when you take it personal. But um, in moments like that, I think, okay, there's three options. Can I
I
control it?
control it.
No.
No.
Can you influence it? You're trying, right? And the rest, you've got to learn to accept, right? And then, of course, for that kind of the learning to accept, there's lots of different possibilities again as well.
Hmm.
Um, but but in a way, it's you're trying to influence what you can, and the rest you have to park it. What
Mm.
other people do with that information, if they're on the warpath, they're always going to be on the warpath. And guess what? They're not going to want to listen
Yeah.
because they have their agenda and that's kind of like clearly their life that they just, I don't know, makes them happy, who knows? But you can't control it, right? And so it is kind of learning strategies to not take it personal.
And have you any sort of strategies or sort of like, because like that breathing one of calming down, that was excellent. So when you find yourself triggered on this, which is by the sounds of it, Jess, about 200 times a day at the moment. But what can we do? Because honestly, we hear this all the time, and we know because we're in the middle of it, but also from other people, their parents, their maybe their ex-partner, or just people on the streets, or work colleagues, or whoever, like that. They're going, even if they're not aware of how cruel they're being, they are going for it anyway, like they have some right to be nasty. So when you find yourself with these people in your face, it was one
Yeah.
thing to get an email and then take a step back. But if someone's shouting in your face, is there something that you can do that will enable you to stay centered and not give as good as you got? I
Yeah.
suppose not to
Yes, I
react so
yes
nastily
I
back.
do. I do have one, and I am convinced if kind of it could be condensed in pill form or in a potion, whatever, everybody would have it in their handbag or in the kitchen cabinet or in their pocket because it
Right.
is so highly effective. And yes, I'm going to use you
Please do.
to try it out. If you briefly kind of possibly close your eyes is easier, and Ray as well, because I know that you have the same, and you briefly go back to seeing all these messages coming in,
Hmm.
yeah, and when you're kind of like there again in the moment, you just kind of you're in the middle of it, just give me a nod, and then
Hmm.
briefly do kind of like your body mind scan again and notice what you're feeling and what's going on in your body, yeah, and now
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
can open your eyes again, and we're going to breathe in through our nose once, and then top up that same breath once more, and then out through nose or mouth. You can choose kind of like a long breath out. If you do it through your mouth, basically, and through pursed lips, you can breathe out for longer. And do it again, in and again, top it up, and maybe one more time, although I'm sure we don't need it anymore.
That,
In, and okay, that's
right.
it.
So this is almost like that is incredible because when I went back in to think about all those messages, and I know I've only seen a small portion of them because Jess has been definitely defending me on that one. I was like, oh, I could feel it in my shoulders. I was like, oh, those bastards, basically. But having done that in what was that, 15 seconds?
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
one. It takes 20 seconds, Ray, not 15, 20. Any sooner and you would faint because your body, your blood pressure, etc. have to adjust. So it needs 20 seconds. That's it. And Jess, I don't know, do you notice a difference?
Yeah, I think so I know in that moment for me it's less anger, it's more of a like almost like an insecurity of like, oh, am I doing the right thing? Like, you're getting 100 messages of people saying you're doing the wrong thing. That's a reasonable question to have, I think.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I think it allows me to like sense myself again and sort of stand on firmer ground.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is an incredibly powerful technique. Again, here I would almost kind of encourage you to put like an elastic band around your phone for a while, and every time you get annoyed at the elastic band, you think, why was this? Ah, okay, I need to practice kind of like I call it very scientifically like sniff sniff sigh. It has a scientific name as
Wow,
well.
that's really scientific. Yeah.
Um, but also, so this is really simple, but also it has been proven in a study comparing with box breathing with meditation, and I believe there was another the fourth. No, the fourth was a control group. Um, Doing this for 5 minutes every day has can have a massive positive impact on your overall stress levels.
Mm,
More so than with box breathing, more so than with meditation.
mm,
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm going to use it. And I think the thing for me is to remember to use it, even though you know you have
exactly.
this. It's like during your day because like I work at like 200 miles an hour. That is my standard normal pace. To get me to slow down because I'm always on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next. And I think that's pretty much how everybody's life kind of works. Particularly any of us living in London or because it's such a fast-paced city. So to remember to actually give yourself that 20 seconds to go, well, I at least have 20 seconds. I mean, I might not have 10 minutes to do a meditation, but I at least have 20 seconds. Everybody has that, you know? And just to, I suppose, get into the habit of using that, you
Yeah,
know? And I'm going to use it. I mean, aside from the transgender side of things, there are a lot of other situations where Ray
completely.
being a little bit calmer would be a much better outcome for a lot of people.
Really?
That's the most diplomatic way I'm going to put it. But yes, so it's
No,
good. Yeah,
and that's why I encourage you to do something. It's called habit stacking. Basically, if this then that, or before this then that, because then basically you're using synapses that in your brain habits it's already there, and you jump on. I mean, if people say it takes 21 days to learn a habit, it's a
I heard
load
it's
of
nonsense though.
nonsense,
Yeah,
completely.
yeah,
Yes. But so for example, let's say the elastic band on your phone, or if you're wearing a ring, put it on a different finger, and every time you get annoyed at it, oh, I have to do the breathing. It's like in out just kind of so you get reminded, and then it becomes ingrained.
right. And so these, I mean, you've given us three, in fact, four very useful, very simple exercises here, which I have to say
So
are
simple.
great.
It's a criminal that they should teach this in primary school.
Right. Yeah, we're not taught about any stress reduction, are we? We're just told you're not
no.
good enough and you have to get this grade, which is anyway, yeah. So the other area, which I think that all of this really ties in, is and Jess really touched on it there was the self doubt, and we have a lot of that as well. Like where Jess and I are at the moment, we're quite far down our transition where we don't get the weird looks anymore. We know what we where we are. You know that it's very different to what it was like 3 years ago, right? Very very different for me. 3 years ago, Jess, I think a little bit longer for you, isn't it? So
It'll be 5 this year, yeah.
five. There you go. Okay, so I'm about to start year four, if you like. But even I don't even recognize who I was. But during that sort of pre period of going on to any sort of testosterone in my case, or just any sort of like medical assistance, let's call it that way. There was an enormous amount of self doubt, an enormous amount of am I doing the wrong thing, an enormous amount of are you mad and what are you doing? And that persists for quite a long time. I guess until the mirror starts showing something that helps you recognize that, yeah, this is what I was aiming for in the whole place. But even still, I've got friends who are maybe 10 or 15 years, and then something happened and they just, and it's almost like they go back to step one. So when you're having those moments of self doubt, whether it's coming from an outside force or an inside force, is there any sort of like extra little sort of bonus thing that you could do to kind of bring yourself back in? Because once you're on that wheel of this, you're on a track, like you're gone.
You're
It's
gone.
very
Yeah,
hard to pull that back.
yeah. But and of course that self-doubt in your case must be really hard, but that's something that everybody struggles with anyway, right? And I think for me, it's more of a nugget of information that helps with that is again, it's our brain. Our brain wants to keep us safe. And for the rest, it almost doesn't care. But also, it wants to preserve as much energy as possible. And the two things that cost the most energy to your brain is movement and change. And of course, you're going to change so much. That's where the brain goes like whoop whoop. Um, and that's where the self-doubt comes in. And that's that voice almost is kind of like your brain trying to kind of keep you off it because it wants nothing more than you doing the same thing every day, basically, because then your brain can predict where your outlay of energy is going to go and where it will need the glucose or the salt or whatever reserves ready. So it our brains always are trying to predict our future. And in a moment like that, it can't do it. So that's why it's going to pipe up so loud as well. So again, I don't know if that helps, but it's understanding your physiology, like why kind of, yeah, do I doubt? It's also just because that's the way our body works. It's trying to stop you from doing that. Your brain's trying to stop you from doing that because that will cost. It can't predict what's going to happen then.
Okay. I'd never thought of it in that way before. And in fact, nobody's ever talked about, change being such a major, use of energy, which is kind of weird because everything is change. Like we don't live the same day twice. Every
Oh,
day we learn something new. Like there's no such thing as standing still. Like that thing about being part of an expanding universe, you can't go backwards. You just can't. Because you're no longer, I mean, every day you're a different person to the person that you were before. So this idea of that your body is trying to stop you from changing, you're actually the first person who's ever said that to me anyway. So that's quite an incredible. So even just being aware that that is the way that your body works, it
because
changes the
because your
perspective.
yeah because your brain basically has to your brain is predicting all the time and in order to because it's in a black box, right? It's in your skull.
Yeah,
So it needs all the information of what it gets from your five senses, what it gets the information that it gets from the signals in your body, from what has happened in the past, etc., in order to predict what's going to happen next. Because if it would react kind of like in the moment, we'd probably be long dead, right?
right. Okay.
So that's why, let's say, when you're hungry, and you eat a sandwich and you're not hungry anymore. But it takes, in effect, what, 20 minutes to get from your mouth to your stomach, although after 5 minutes you're not hungry anymore. And that is because your brain knows, okay, normally he eats a sandwich and we're fine, so that's what's going to happen. It signals, although it's not quite there yet, because it can predict.
Well, okay. Well, it's good to know that there's another sort of like subconscious controller that's trying to keep me on track. It's doing a very bad job. I'm not
You
sure
know
at
what?
all. But
It's
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not even so. Yeah, and it's physiological, right? And so I don't know if that helps you, but for me,
yeah.
that helps explain why whenever it's change always feels awkward, right? But that helps. And if ever you're interested in the science behind it, let me know and I'll point you to the right source.
I'm
But
always interested in the science behind it. That's for
yeah, yeah,
sure. We can even put it in the description below,
Sure.
for people to sort of look up as well. I meant to say because of course I would talk, and so Jess now is well aware, and the two of us are getting good at this. We would talk forever, but we do of course realize that this is a webinar where it's live, and those of you who are on, you have an opportunity to ask some questions. And I think I forgot to mention that when I pressed the record button, but you do. So if you want to ask any questions, you can't unmute yourself. It's a webinar, but you can put something in the chat. So either put something in the chat or put something on in the Q&A section. And what we'll do is we'll ask that question. So if you have a question for Anneleen, if you have maybe something that's when I say personal to you, no one's going to know who you are. And put it in the chat and let's put her to her metal there and see what if she can come up with some solutions for you. And if no one decides to ask any questions, that's absolutely fine. I'll keep talking. I have no problem with that. But just to let that know. And also, by the way, if you're listening to the recording of this, for those of you that are watching this on YouTube later, if you have a question, put it in the comment section below. Put it in the comment section. We'll come back to you. Okay, we're not always the best at it, but we will do that. Oh, I just see something has popped in. Not a question. The chat has been disabled on my end. Well, that's a problem. So okay. That's if chat is disabled, then no wonder it's so quiet in here. We usually get loads of that stuff. So let me just try and sort that out. And while we do that,
Well, that's
show.
okay. I mean, we can see the Q&A. So
Yeah, just
if
put
there
it
are
in the
any,
Q&A because the Q&A is working. So I'm sorry if the chat is disabled. We didn't realize that was going to happen. Didn't know. All right. All right. So if questions come in, we'll ask those. Okay. So that takes care of a lot of sort of like the moment to moment. Another one that I want to talk about, which also we hear about, and I don't know if this is one of the questions that I gave to you, Anneleen. I'm sorry. I have no idea. But we have a tendency to, when something happens, a stress reaction would be to either eat too much, go on a drinking binge, hate yourself, maybe hurt yourself. All of this kind of stuff tends to be sort of almost like an automatic trigger. And I know that it's kind of practiced over time, but have you, is there a way or is there a suggestion that you would make that if you find yourself reaching for that 50th chocolate bar or another bottle of whiskey or whatever it might be for the individual, is there something that you can do or suggest that would enable us to come back down to a more intelligent choice? You're thinking off the top of your head now. I know that.
No,
Clearly,
no,
I
no,
didn't
no.
ask you.
No, what I'm thinking is if you are in basically in that frenzy of eating chocolate because you want to numb yourself or whatever,
Yeah.
is you are very you're on automatic pilot, right? So it as long as you don't realize kind of like, hang on a minute, what am I doing? It's you're just gonna feel bad afterwards and think, why did I do that? So um what can help is everything that we just kind of talked about today to build that into your life because it is just skills and skills means kind of like you just put some muscle to it by practicing it and the more you do that and the more for example if you do every day let's say a few sniff sighs and you know and you feel better afterwards there is hope that when you reach for that 48th chocolate bar that you think well I still don't feel better what's going on and it's basically that moment where you come into the now then you have the power to do something about it.
Yeah. I guess it kind of almost goes back to the first exercise you gave us, where you see yourself doing a behavior that you know you shouldn't really be doing, or is that you know is your trigger and you know that you do it. It's that moment of bringing yourself back into the present. It's like, why am I feeling that? Is eating this chocolate bar or drinking this drink reducing my stress? Have I brought myself back into the present moment? Will breathing help me calm down? Which is, I guess, all of the things that you've already given us. And this is just, I guess, another sign that
And you
you're in
can come at
stress.
it from so many different angles
Yeah.
where what also helps for me is the question who's in power, where does the power lie, right? So like in that moment you're not in power and maybe you don't want to be in power, that's fine. It's not a judgment on that moment but it's kind of like if you notice you're in a situation or in a state in a mental state that you don't want to be in, how can
Mm,
you get yourself out of it?
yeah.
And there it sounds kind of like almost as if I'm always going to give the same answer, but your breath is the quickest way to get you out and to shift that mental state.
Okay. Okay, good. Now, the questions are starting to come thick and fast now, by the way. So
Mhm.
we'll ask, in order, I'll ask them in the questions now. So one of the questions that come through here is, can you recommend any mental health exercises specific for people who are neurodivergent?
Um, I personally, I think it depends if you want to go in specifics in what type of neurodivergent, but I think generally again the breath, like the box breathing, if you want to become calmer but focused. If I think I'd need a little bit more information on what mental health exercise, as in for what situation.
I mean, hopefully, whoever that individual is will say a little bit. Jess has just moved to the
Yes,
answered section,
please.
but
Yes, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
but if someone can go back in and just say if there's something specific, so that we can give something specific for you. I mean,
Yeah, because for example,
neurodivergence
if if if
is a
if
huge
the
thing.
person were ADHD and finds it very hard to sit still, for example,
Yeah,
which I can very much align with because that would be me as well, is then you can, for example, let's say go for a walk and every step, every second step you count. So you go, for example, one, two, one, two, one, two, for example. Um, that takes you out of your mind, into your body, and into the now.
okay. So again, it's just another way to get into the making yourself present and calming yourself down. You know? Okay. A message has come in here. It's an anonymous person. So a short message to thank Anneleen. I don't want to know. Okay. But as I have difficulty recognizing emotions, I believe that the breathing exercise as a habit may help me even when I am not aware or I am aware that I am stressed or overwhelmed. So that breathing thing. And there's a lot of people again who would struggle to notice that they're going at 100 miles an hour, that they
Yeah.
are actually in an emotional, circuit, because particularly when you're in this stress scenario all the time and you don't even realize you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's that's why I said the awareness is the hardest bit, right? Or
Right.
is it's not hard, but is the biggest, is the most important because once you're aware, you get a choice point. But if you're on autopilot the whole time, then your power lies elsewhere.
Right.
Um,
So
so
the self power.
Yeah.
um, yes.
Yes.
We've
Um,
had a question come in here. As someone who works in the front line of the current culture war, something me and my editor very often do is give ourselves explicit verbal permission to step away and treat ourselves, whether it be a piece of food, music, or other comfort. We find this is more effective than when we tell ourselves, "I need to relax," for example. Is there a basis for this working within a buddy system? Is that a viable method for mental health cleanliness?
Clearly, it's a viable method because it works. And I am very much of the principle, kind of like it has to be workable. Anything that works, as long as it is kind of like vaguely healthy and decent, so I guess, is allowed.
yeah.
Um, it's yeah. There's so many different ways of doing it, and that's where my passion comes from because we just never get told these. I was never told kind of like any coping tools. And telling calm down, that's kind of like your mind trying to
That
influence
makes me
your mind with your
explode.
mind. It doesn't
Yeah.
work. It does
No.
not work. No. Um,
Yeah.
but I wanted to quickly come back to the question before about kind of like finding it difficult to name emotions.
Hmm.
Yes.
Um, that's where the scan, I think, comes in. I find very important because you need to learn to, or you need to read what goes on so you can deal with it most effectively. And there is an app, and it's called, we can put it afterwards in the caption and the show notes as well. It's called howwefeel.org, I think. And it's a free app. And what it does is you can track how you feel, but it has quite precise vocabulary. So it doesn't say kind of like anger, happy, whatever. It goes more in depth. And I think if you make an account, you can then track it over time as well. And it goes along two axes, and it's kind of like an axis of pleasantness, let's say, from not pleasant at all to very pleasant, and the other axis is from is your level of energy, like no energy to a lot of energy. And it is incredibly valuable. It's so helpful because, again, once you learn to name them precisely, you you get more power on what to do about it if you don't feel it's serving you in that moment.
Mm. So I think, so what was the name of the app again?
How we feel, but well, no, I
Or
said but org. That's the website, but it's
yeah.
on Android and on iPhone.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Okay. Good. So we
I've
could
got
look
the
that up.
link here, so I
You've got
can.
the link. Okay. Okay. Right. So I think just to, I suppose a comment on that answer that you've just given there is that even if you don't feel emotion, you still have physical sensation, most likely. And it's likely that whatever you are feeling, even though you don't know that you're feeling it, your body will still give you signals of some sort of a stress response. And it was back to again to stiff shoulders or back pain or grinding your teeth or, do you know what I mean? Just like this. So it might be possible that I think that body scan is a good idea because if you can't feel the emotion, your body is feeling it. And
Yes.
that is a good way.
And as I said, it's like it goes together. Basically, if you have a very calm mind, you're going to have very soft muscles. I don't know what that feels like very often,
Yeah.
but it makes sense. It's basically it's yeah.
Okay. I think that's very helpful. Thank you. So the person who asked the original question that we asked you has now come back, and this is the one about
Neurodivergent.
the neurodiversity.
Neurodivergent,
Yes.
yeah.
And what they're saying now is I would like to say that rumination is something which could be linked to my experience.
Yes. And rumination is it's a tough one, but it's again once you've realized, so that's already congratulations because that's the hard bit. Um, it's kind of like energy that lies in the past, and where I come back to the bandwidth. Um, if you think about your focus, it's almost like where your focus goes, your energy flows,
Mm.
right? And you can get out of rumination by anything that helps you to ground or drop in the now. Like for example, the 5 4 3 2 1, for sure. It can be something as simple as, okay, I'm going to just focus on my breath. Like, okay, I'm now in and out, and guess what? You have no time to think about what was happening again. So yes, rumination and worry are the one is in the past, the other is in the future. Um, but if you think about it rationally, in those moments, of course, we don't think rationally. But for sake of now, is yesterday doesn't exist anymore, and tomorrow doesn't exist yet. The only moment that exists is now. And the more focus you bring into the now, that means the more energy you will have in the now.
Right. And I guess the thing is, we can't really, I mean, physically, we can't do anything about yesterday, but we can change how our perspective of it, and we can learn from it and
That's it. Yeah.
make different choices next time. Maybe those set of circumstances come up or something similar to it.
Yeah.
And I guess forgiveness of the self is a big one
I
on
was
that.
just going to say that, Ray, because we are so hard on ourselves. And I think um, that would be almost kind of like my most important message is treat yourself as your best friend, because you don't want to write down or kind of like voice what often goes on and how we talk to ourselves. We would never, ever even think of talking to somebody else like that. So why do it to ourselves? And I don't know, it might depend on where you've grown up. I'm from Belgium. Not that that makes a big difference, but maybe Eastern um, ways of living might be different. But I was always kind of under the impression like you have to be there for others. And guess what? You have to look after yourself first because you can't pour from an empty cup. And it's very much kind of like look after number one first. And that also means kind of be compassionate for yourself. Give yourself a hug. And again, I'm talking here now, that sounds maybe a bit kind of like fluffy, but there is science behind it. If you do this, um, you're secreting oxytocin, and I believe also endorphins. I'm not quite sure anymore about that, but it works, and also it feels good to have a hug. But
Wow. So you literally mean give yourself a literal hug.
give you and rub
Mm.
has an immediate effect on your physiology. It
Feel
does.
better. Yes. Yes. That is fantastic. That's it. You have given us so many tools, so many ideas, so many different ways to do perspective. So thank you so much. And there's lots of thank yous coming in. I'm not sure you can quite see it, but they're coming in here on the chat. So I have to say, Anneleen, brilliant. The simplicity is always the best key, and you've given us some great examples tonight. And I have to say, thank you very much. Now, tell me something. If somebody wants to get in contact with you, if somebody wants to maybe work with you or find out more about how you work, today I think is a very good example of that. Where should they go, and what do you need them to do?
I have a website. It's called Corestar, so CORESTAR .co. I know that a lot of people might kind of automatically want to type .com. So I also have CorestarCoaching.com. Just to not to confuse things. I also have a website, or but that's in the making, is transwellbeingmatters.com. And I'm about to finish an online learning course on managing stress with, I mean, it's not kind of like highly specific, but with Islam towards the gender variant community because the stresses are so specific. And yes, if anybody is interested in that, it should be ready by next week, the end of next week.
Okay,
And it has all these tools in it. It has a workbook, the recordings to listen to, etc. So
brilliant.
Amazing.
Fabulous. Well, that is amazing, and thank you very much. So it's always nice to have a little bit of a follow on. It's kind of like you get this little bit, but then there's a lot more to be done in the background, and that's fantastic. So there you have it, coursestar.co. If that is something that interests you, obviously you know it will be on lead. Myself and Jess will not be there. Just Annelie. So yes, so again, and thank you so much for that. That was absolutely fantastic. I learned loads, and I love it when I learn loads. And thank you for those extras because I definitely will be applying them myself, which is perfect. And I hope that those of you who are either listening to this live or who are listening to this on YouTube have got some benefit from it. That is what we aim to do. And we are delighted, Anneline, that you agreed to come on and to give us your wisdom and to give us your learnings because it's highly valuable. So thank you so much for doing that.
and of course, what I forgot to say, but put my email out as well, Anneleen@coursestar.co. I'll be very happy to respond.
Lovely. If you look in the
Amazing.
description down below on the video, because now we're at the end now, so it'll be on there on YouTube, you can see that Anneline's details are going to be in the description. And if anybody wants us or has not got access to it, or anybody this evening doesn't have it, just email either myself or Jess, and we will send those details over to you. So you have that option as well. Annalene, as usual, we've gone over time, haven't we, Jess? We always do. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us. We are enormously grateful. And I'm sure that everybody has got great benefit from this. I know that I have. And thank you. So thank you. But we've kind of held up
Bye.
people's evening looking. Yeah.
Thank you so
Wonderful. All
much.
right. So everybody take care. Thank you so much for being on with us. We very much appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you next time. But until then, have a wonderful life. Know that we are here to help you in any way that we can. And we will see you then. So take care, everybody. And goodbye. Cheers.
Bye.
Talk
Bye
soon all.
bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.